Welcome to Small Business Success Talks Summer of Strategy series, where I interview guests to get their expertise in marketing and business development to help us all plan accordingly for the rest of 2023. Summer is a perfect time to evaluate how well, or maybe not so well, the year is going, determine what the gaps are, and learn from some of the best in the business building industry, their strategies and tactics to close the gap and build momentum in your own business and life. I am your host, Christy Smallwood, and let's get strategic. So Rachel and John, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Small Business Success Talk. It's during our Summer of Strategy kind of campaign. So we're having these episodes to focus on that. Like, what are the best things we can do for small business during this time? So I'm pulling in my friends from the Marketing Podcast Network to give us like your background, your expertise, and then what we should really do. So if I were to say to you, like, what do you want people to already know about you when you walk in the room? What would you say?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think that it would be experience. It would be some kind of background, some kind of experience, some kind of relatability to things that you've done already, but acknowledgement of the fact that there's always more to learn.
Nice. John, what about you?
Yeah. I think,
You could say ditto.
yeah, I was going to say, she said experience. I'm looking at my gray hair.
Right.
No, I think that, here in Pittsburgh, we have become a little bit known. We're certainly not famous or anything, but from a personality standpoint, it's pretty cool that people see us and say, wow, you guys work really hard and you're doing something all the time, but here are all the cool things. I love all the good things you do, because we do a lot of nonprofit work. So not patting ourselves on the back, it just feels good that people acknowledge that we have experience and we do get around, because we do try to tell the Pittsburgh story. So it's kind of cool that people kind of know that. Actually, and then the funny story is we both at separate times have been places where people knew about us. And we were both at funeral homes doing visitations, and people came up and said, "Are you Jagoff?" And I whispered. So, anyways, but
At least they whispered.
Yeah, the point is, it's nice that people kind of recognize that somewhere along the way we have some
Validity.
Validity is a good word.
Okay, so you mentioned a phrase that I already asked John in the proverbial green room. Like, you're going to have to pronounce that again, because I hear it a certain way and it's my redneck version. But that's not what that is. So what is Jagoff? What is that? Tell my non-Pittsburgh people what that is.
Sure. So it's spelled like Y-A, then separate word Jagoff, Jagoff with an exclamation point. And Jagoff is a Pittsburghese term. It doesn't mean anything dirty. However, 50% of people got their mouths soaked when they said it when they were younger, and 50%
tone of voice is just as meaningful.
Right. But it's a phrase. It's definitely a Pittsburghese phrase. And in Pittsburgh, it's two things. It's a term that you might yell at somebody if they cut you off while you're driving, or it's also a term of endearment. If I see somebody at the airport and I know they're from Pittsburgh, they have a Steelers jersey on or something, we go, "Hey, how you doing, you Jagoff?" And that kind of thing. So it's always the soft G, and and that's it. And that's where our claim to fame has been, to try to get the phrase more mellow and, have it as a friendly term. And that's what it is. It's in the Oxford Dictionary.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have that friendly connotation. It only gives the one that's you're a jerk. So
which is, my redneck version.
Right.
So give me some of your background and your expertise. So where you guys really focus on that? Where do you going to start?
Yeah, it was like nudge. Our background, just quick background, is that I was a journalist by trade and stayed home for a bunch of years to obviously focus on my children, and went into a PR realm later in life when I was 39, and learned the PR world a little bit better, because there was such a separation between PR and media during my, learning days. And John actually was doing EMS marketing as well as had the podcast. So I was presenting him with press releases for him to cover, because he was one of the only podcasts in town. And so we sort of had this crazy synergy, this chemistry immediately. We had like minds, where it's very business minded, but let's figure out how this can be fun. And as he said, we partnered later and learned that a little bit of everything kind of helped go to the next level. So I had some media experience and some PR experience in writing, and he had marketing experience and media experience and a good business savvy. And so we were greater in number by joining forces. And so we started as podcast hosts and said, you know, I have a marketing client. I have a marketing client. Can I bounce these ideas off of you? And now 6 years later, we have about 23 clients who we retain monthly, which our sweet spot, ironically, to your first question, which was, what do you want people to know? Our experience brought us here, but our thirst for new knowledge is what helps us thrive. So those two intersecting has helped us to have social media be our sweet spot, because we weren't babies of it. We weren't born into the social media world. We had to learn it because we knew the old school way of coming up in marketing and PR. And so we have this unique blend of what used to be, as we say in Pittsburgh, used to, because we have lazy tongues, and what is now, and how they, when they're married, what a force it can be.
Mm. And, you know, my story is interesting. As we talked in the virtual green room, Christy, while Rachel was coming in hot with her driver. And anyways, so, you know, I had this swanky job as a vice president of marketing as Twitter and Facebook were coming around, and I didn't really know it. And so with the company got sold, I lost my job, and I had to figure out what is social media at my age. You know, Rachel just said that. And so the crazy thing is I emailed our friend Dan and said, how do I start a blog? He was a writer, a social media guy. And he's like, oh my God, John wants to start a blog. You know, I think he wanted to pull his hair out. He still works for us, thank God. But the fact is that I had started the blog so I could learn about Twitter and learn about Facebook and learn about blogging and just kind of roll up the sleeves and get our hands dirty. And I think that's the coolest part, is that we take our older knowledge of what things have been. And I'm not a trained journalist. I'm not a trained marketer. As a matter of fact, much to the chagrin of my grandmother, I got an accounting degree and never became a CPA. And marketing just became my thing. And so anyway, so I'm not a trained marketer or a reporter or journalist, but somehow along the way, what we learned and what we know from our past have all combined to be pretty good deal right now. Yeah.
So I would say, you know, to your original question, then the expertise would be a sweet spot with social media, but a focus on the need for public relations in a world of the buy being so important. Everything's pay for play, even down to the social media at this point, right? And it wasn't how many, I don't know if George, you know, talked about that, but again, it's the expertise is the balance of what's needed. It's figuring out the goal. And if it's just awareness, if it's just becoming more known and gaining a presence, that's one thing. But, you know, everybody and their mother says, well, I want to make money. Well, who doesn't? You know, so it's kind of,
thanks for playing the game.
Yeah. You know, once you get through that question and you sort of see what are the actual goals, sometimes those goals change. So you have to be willing to kind of shuck and jive along with those, because you know, initial consultation and even first couple months of courting your client and kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't. I used to say the word trial and error, but I don't want it to sound like I don't know what I'm doing. But trial and error is part of life, you know, so this is what I think is tailor-made for you, but we're only going to know if we try it, and we have to give it so much time to see if it works. And then if it doesn't, how do we pivot, which we hate that word, but.
And doesn't marketing lend itself to, you know, again, you know, you can try things on social media and we watch the likes, you watch the comments and things like that. And, you know, you can evaluate this worked or it didn't. There's no guessing, you know, whether your newspaper ad worked or not, you know, or your radio ad. And, you know, I think that one thing I think of is that nothing's changed over the years. You know, there are so many protocols that are still the same. Like, in order to make a sale, whether it's marketing services, you still have to probe, like Rachel said. You have to ask questions and assess that. That's my EMS background. Assess the patient, determine what the treatment modalities are going to be. Same thing here. If you're trying to sell pipe, if you're trying to sell paper or marketing services, you have to get in there and learn about them, build a rapport, and then try to, ask them for your services and make sure you deserve to get their services. Nothing's different other than the vehicle, social media, right? If you were a jerk 40 years ago at a networking event, walking around just pressing the flash, you're probably going to make those same mistakes on Twitter and Facebook, talking just about yourself. So the vehicles are just different versus the process.
I was like, there's so many things already happened in my head. So one, I was looking over to my over here. There it is, Brass Tacks. I was trying to find the actual book. In that Brass Tacks, it's an older, like a 1997 book written by an entrepreneur. And one of the things that he had said in there is his best mentors were trial and error.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to try things to see what works and what doesn't, as long as those things are still, to me, going in the direction of the strategy that you decided that you wanted to do.
Right.
Which one of the things I found is that's the hardest thing for people to figure out is, what do you really want?
Yes,
right.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Yep.
And then other side note, that whole conversation about being a jerk during networking, that's a whole separate episode. Like, so many stories I could tell.
Well, you could write guest blogs for us.
There you
go. There's a lot of what not to do during networking.
Yeah.
Yes. So many good things already in this conversation, and I appreciate that. But I do want to ask, like, since my audience is small business owners, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the best advice you could give small business owners, which are, the hometown heroes of the bunch, based on your experience, your expertise? What would be the best advice you could give them?
I just literally had this conversation last night. I was telling Rachel earlier is that, when we're doing marketing for small businesses, some of our clients are larger auto dealers and family owned, but our biggest competitor is, I just joke, it's somebody's nephew or niece that's in college, right? 90% of the work that we do is social media. So we say, well, here's our price. And they say, well, my nephew or my niece is in college and they understand this a lot better than me. So I'm just going to pay them $200 a month to do that. And what they don't understand is that there's continuity. There's actually, you would not hire, nothing against them. They just don't know. You would not hire your nephew or niece to go do all of your sales of your steel or your pipe or whatever it is, because they don't know the business and they don't know the clients. They haven't gone out and made those assessments. We do something completely different. We go out and decide what the content is going to be, how frequently we measure it. People think social media still is just posting things and, the sale, hey, we have 10% off tires. Great. That doesn't mean anything to anybody unless I need tires today. Right. So I think that's the biggest thing is, yes, it's an expense, but is it an expense that you cannot afford to pay? Right. Because somewhere along the way, somebody has to do your social media and your marketing,
at least
digital marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you're too busy elbows deep into whatever your business is doing, and then you have to get somebody to do it, because people don't even look up websites anymore. They look up Facebook pages and Instagram pages to see if you're on there. That's how they legitimize you, right? And find out if they can connect.
Or like John will say, and I think it's a great point. He'll say, don't you hire someone to do your accounting because you don't know it. So it's the same thing. It's becoming a description of your business that you need. So having somebody who knows it is smarter. And sometimes, some people are savvy enough that it may only be we've been very fortunate that our retainers have lasted years, and some don't. Some are project-based, or some are like, listen, I literally needed you to help me for this many months. So, it used to be that we would say 3 months and then, that's the contract. And if you want to renew, now any proposal that we're doing, we're saying 6 months, because it's a totally different, it's not about making money off of them. It's about, there's steps in it. And the algorithm of social media has changed so much that we have to establish what it is. Again, the trial and error. Yep. We have to make sure that what it is is right to kind of get that momentum going. So, do you hire an accountant? Yes. So why wouldn't you hire social media? But to me, even though I think that's important, I think the best advice, if that was the original question, is to build the relationship. I think you have to have relationships. And I know that sounds so cliche, but you have to make sure that you're engaging in some way. It may not be that you love each other, that you even have the same views, but there has to be a relationship there, because I know of clients who we've retained for a while who we may not love, but somehow building that relationship has helped create a network beyond. And that's the strength in us, because we've been around. The experience has led to the ability to network. The networking ability has led to a network of people. And once you have a network of people, you're building trust and you're building that relationship. And that's really what we're selling more than we are our services. Because let's face it, their marketing companies are a dime a dozen anymore. And we are finding that people are coming to us more for the experience and the relationship of the network.
So you guys, we've been talking about networking and stuff, and I've got, are you familiar with Harvey Mackay?
No.
Mm-mm.
So dig your well before you're thirsty.
Okay.
And how to swim with the sharks without getting eaten.
Okay. I've heard that.
Yeah,
title.
I was going to say.
Yeah. So he's huge on building relationships and networking, and he's part of the Speaker Association. I got to meet this guy. I was like, anyway, it was one of the fangirl moments I've had in my life.
Mhm.
And I have his books, and it's been amazing to read his books because they're just like short snippets of, here's an example of what to do in this kind of a situation. Here's why you want to build, and it's all threaded around building the relationship.
Mhm.
And he even has a tool that he uses across his entire system. Everybody uses it, like 66 questions that they have to answer about their people in their network, not just the client.
Read that. Okay.
That prospective person, not just your basic contact information, but who's your favorite sports team? Like what, right? Do they call it a buggy or a cart? Like what language are they using when they refer to some, like there's certain questions that everybody has to ask. And then if you know all of those things about that person, you know how to personalize and build a relationship.
Yes.
Read the room. Right.
Yeah. And when, if an attorney or, client comes to you and says, I need 20 radio or TV commercials, we have to determine, do they want those TV commercials because they want to sell their product, or are they an egotistical in a way? They want to see their face on the screen, and some of that determines how you're going to produce these things, because maybe they just want to be known in the community for what they do, and maybe they really do want to sell their services. So that's it, read the room or get that relationship going. So, I think you mentioned it earlier, Christy, is just figure out what it is they're really asking for. If they say they want marketing, what do they want? Do they want themselves to be out in the public? Do they want to market their services? Do they want to show their family? What's the persona of all that marketing? And we agree 100% with that. And that's where I think we do win a little bit, being experienced, that we know that, versus, we're just going to start an Instagram page and do reels of everything you do.
Right.
That's not going to get us a sale.
Right.
So for a lot of our, I'm learning to call them the hometown heroes, the small businesses, some of that relationship building, they don't even think about, like they just do because they love their people that come in. What would you say when you have to translate that to the digital channels? What are some things they can do intentionally to build a relationship digitally?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You have an answer already.
I think it's
formulating mine. That was my formulation.
I think it's being just yourself, right? If you're a person, you have these relationship, if you're doing home remodeling, it's asking those people, can I take a picture of what I've done? The cabinets are beautiful, but let's take a picture of you and your dog, your favorite person, doing your favorite thing. If I sell you a car, we try to tell our car dealers, tell your clients to go home and not take a picture of themselves, but take a picture of themselves doing their favorite thing with their new car, because people love to celebrate themselves for the most part. And so if I'm walking into somebody's hardware store, bar, or whatever it is, make that connection. And that's where the whole social media rule is. Make the social media about them versus you, because the more they see themselves, the more they become clingy to that sticky, whatever that duct tape marketing book was, you know, it becomes
Made to stick. It's over on my
yeah.
shelf.
Yeah. And, you know, so, you know, doing things like that, it's not hard. It's just thinking about it. But again, if you're the owner of the business and you're typing the invoices and you're, you know, putting the proposals out, sometimes you don't think of those things. So that would be my recommendation. Be yourself with your clients, you know, and engage them in talking about whatever, posting about them more than it is about you.
I would say truly, I joked, but read the room. Don't read from a script, right? Because so often in a sales and marketing position, you're given this sort of key or this outline of what the expectation is and how that particular company operates. I think people can see right through it. And I think that the more people, you have one chance. First impressions are so important. Doesn't mean you can't have another impression, but first impressions are so important. And if you're reading the room based on information that you're just trying to spew, you're going to fail. So if you can kind of read the room and see what it is they're looking for. And again, not expecting you to have a full strategy, full plan, the relationship isn't built in one day, but figure out what it is they like about you. You can find out so much about people, like sort of like you just said. I'm not saying 66 questions, but how was your day? And give an example of what you did. So to John's point, it's not all about me, but if I'm willing to open myself up and tell you something about me, you're going to open up back to me. So it's sort of these like learning how to be a better salesperson for yourself to kind of see what they're looking for. And I think that's the 101 for a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some great examples that either you've had yourselves or you've seen out there of relationship building through the digital world?
God, clearly he's going first again.
This is all Rachel. This is literally how Rachel works every day. She tries to connect people, and we've been fortunate that we have a very successful podcast here about Pittsburgh, and it's all positive Pittsburgh. And we love it. And our podcast is not done in the studio. It's done at locations, whether it's a local bar or that's having a promotion,
new
or
events,
new events, axe throwing, curling. We've taken people curling, taken people baseball hitting. Anyways, the coolest part about all those things is we don't book people to be strategic about, we're going to do baseball, so we do all baseball people. We bring people that are important to be on the podcast. And it's cool when this person goes over to that person while they're waiting to be on the podcast. And the next thing you know, they're exchanging business cards. So that digital world of our podcast has literally knitted together so many different relationships. And it's cool. Now, we would be millionaires if we took a percentage of all of those conversations that would happen, but we don't. So, but it's, to me, that networking thing that happens because of the podcast. And again, that's the way Rachel thinks. When we first met, she's like, come to this art thing. I'm like, no, that doesn't even fit my style. And, you know, and she's like, you sure you don't want to come to the art thing? I'm like, nah, that's okay. And I didn't, but now I understand how she thinks. And she knows that, you know, bringing different entities together just gets people talking. Not that everybody leaves best friends after every podcast or with a business linkage, but it literally is fun to watch them talk offline while we're on the podcast and see them. So the digital world is the podcast and they're talking, and it's super cool. They wouldn't have met if it wouldn't have been for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
a good point.
What's up?
That was a good answer. I'll take it now.
Well done,
Rachel. It was me.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's Rachel.
I'm just kidding.
It's how she thinks.
I'm just kidding.
And I've learned that from her.
Well, I just think we live in a world, you know, John and I say this all the time, and I'm certainly not trying to be confrontational, but as I said, marketing companies are a dime a dozen because there's so many people who, and COVID birthed this, right? Like, oh, I can market you, you know, with very little background or experience. And some are great and some aren't, but marketing people, as I'm sure others, are very paranoid. And so it's like, wait, I can't collab with someone else because they may have a more creative idea. Isn't there
steal my client?
Right.
Steal my client.
Right. And our theory isn't there enough room for so many? Because safety in numbers or that, not even that, like, there's so many different levels of creativity and so many different ways that you can take things and so many opportunities and platforms now that I might say one thing that sparks somebody else to do something. And isn't that worth it? You know, we were just interviewed from our local newspaper about an event we're doing yesterday. And the best answer I've given was yesterday when he said, like, what is it that, you know, what's your last words? Like, what would you want to say? It is not about John and Rachel. It is about how something we did affected someone else to do it their way. So isn't there room for other people to kind of do this? And if we do, and we're accepting of it, we're elevating each other. I'm not saying that there's not a healthy concept to competitive. I mean, I will beat you at skee ball, but it's important to recognize that you can be among each other and be successful.
And what we do kind of helps us with that, because we have our feet on two logs going down the lake, you know, so going down the river. One's the marketing side, and one of them, and some people don't even use the Jagoff thing. They just use us. And then the other side is we have the podcast, we have videos. So we're sort of like part of the personality profile of Pittsburgh. So it's cool in that we think we've broken down some of those barriers, because other marketing companies will say, oh, my client would like to do this with you. And, or can you think of something to do with my client? We're looking for something original and Pittsburghy. So it's kind of cool that other marketing companies have broken down that barrier and to see that we're not here to shark, their clients.
We're not younger, we're not, there's not this, like, there's not major comp. We just, let's figure it out.
Yeah.
So a couple quick notes. National Speaker Association, part of their mantra is make the pie bigger. I have never been a part of any group of people who are so willing to help and collaborate with their fellow competition. It's a totally different environment for me. So I totally get that. And my local chamber, I'm part of the board, and we love to collaborate with other chambers in the region. It just helps, like when we do big networking events, you bring your people, we bring ours, everybody gets to meet. And while, yes, there's some competition and like programming and the numbers and, the basic stuff, there's also, we come up with a new word, competilaboration.
There you go.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
We're friendly competitors, but we like to collaborate as well. And, part of our culture that we've also transformed our culture into, we take what we do very seriously, but we're providing the atmosphere of fun to do it in. And because you had mentioned something about having fun at the very beginning, and I was like, yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that small business, when they're really in the zone, they have fun with what they do. Versus I remember back in my corporate days with KFC, it wasn't all that fun.
Right.
So my workload in a day, like, it's very similar. I was in marketing there and I do marketing here, and totally different environment with small business. Totally different.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. Okay. So we've gone through some great advice. What are some examples of what not to do?
Like from a small business marketing standpoint?
Sure. We can start with that.
Okay. Again, I'd go back to our mantra. Don't think you can do it all, and, budget appropriately for that, because you just can't do it all. If you're a doctor, you come out of medical school, you know how to treat patients. You don't know how to do billing. You don't know how to do accounting. You don't know how to do marketing, but you need it somewhere along the way. But some doctors and lawyers come out of school with that capability, but they don't have all of them. So you do have to, the mistake is trying to think that you can do it all. And if you've ever read the book, The E-Myth, by George Gerber, right? So you have to do it all in the beginning. And that's where we had to start to build the organizational chart below us to help make John and Rachel available to do these things, including seeing 50,000 feet down the road so we could see what the next thing is. So don't think you can do it all, I guess, is the point. Forever.
Mine's a little different. I say, don't invest all of your time in the business plan, because sometimes the business plan doesn't even have to be there. You're evolving as life goes.
Show her ours.
Ooh,
I'm sorry.
It
you're
doesn't
gonna want to see this on video. All right.
Doesn't
You wanna see
exist,
this?
right? And we're not saying don't be organized.
Yeah.
Not having a full bit, our story, again, not that it's so compelling, but we were like minds who had the same end goal of liking our jobs and wanting to make our jobs better and different and make changes in our city. And we're doing that, and we've sort of done that. So that has made us look to what's next. So that doesn't mean that we don't sit down and convene and look at our finances and look at our team and look at our goals and look at what we want to accomplish or what our competition is and how we need to be better. All of those things happen regularly without us having to go to this plan that when you first start out, so many people are like, well, what's your business plan? Well, again, doesn't it go back to the original thing where I said, everybody wants to make money. So we need to figure out through trial and error what works and what doesn't to build our company to be stronger. And that's where we are 6-7 years later. And take the risk, right? Don't be afraid to take the risk, because that's life. And again, if COVID taught us anything, there was this mass exodus of people who didn't like their jobs. We did this way before that because it was more important to be happy than not, and listen, our days, I have my own advice that we don't follow. I don't end my day when I say I'm going to end my day. There's times, like he said, we take it on and say, but it's our company, so we have to keep going. We love our team and they're great, but I saw it this way and I'm going to make some tweaks. And sometimes there's not enough hours in the day. Those are all what not to do's, but they're all part of the non-existent business plan that helps build your success and your experience.
So transparency. I love strategic planning. Love it. But where I spend most of that time is to get to know two big things. What makes you, like how are you showing up in the room? What's important to you? And then what do you really want? Because there is no plan if we don't have a destination. I have no way to need to build a roadmap if I don't know where you want to go.
Correct.
Yep. And those are the two areas I love to work in, because to see the wheels turn and to see people like re-engage and get re-sparked about their business. They've been in business 10, 15 years and not done a plan. And then we sit down to become intentional about the meaning of everything. Yeah. Sure, absolutely. When you're starting out,
should we hire you so that you can help us? Like,
absolutely. I would love to do that. Okay. This is my thing.
Yeah.
But typically, whenever somebody asks me about business planning, I'm like, what do you need the plan for?
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're going to go get capital to a bank,
that's
when you really need the traditional look and feel of a business plan. Otherwise, let's get this shit down to one page that you put up on the wall to remind yourself this is where I'm going.
Right.
Because we all know, and I've had the conversation in other podcasts, things change, the channels, the technology, all of these things of the how-to tactic changes all the time. But the meaning behind it shouldn't change.
Correct.
Yep. And that's where I like to focus with people.
And the passion, right? If the passion changes, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. So I love that. I love where we've been in this conversation. Okay. So checking everything.
No, you're fine.
Yeah. So what are some things that you guys wish you would have known sooner in your own business?
How to prioritize and balance, because I think, and not necessarily from a business perspective, but personal and business. And I think that that's the hardest thing for a small business, because it does impede whether you agree, but whether you say it is or it isn't. I don't know a small business that, I don't care what year you're in, that you don't say, like I just said, oh, I have 10 more minutes to work on this, or I can just give me a half an hour, and figuring out some parameters that work for you to kind of balance your day.
No, I would agree with that. 100%.
Yeah.
We live it, we observe it. And I observe it through Rachel. We try to take these breaks for family time, things like that. I just ditto. I'll do a ditto there.
Well, and we're all creatures of, if I knew then what I know now. I mean, it's what we could say about anything. But I look back to the years of, I have 3 children, and, why didn't I have this company then? Because it wasn't in the plan. That's not how it was. I don't have any regrets for what it was. It helped build me to where I am now.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, with a little bit of
Figured.
luck, we would have met each other earlier. I think earlier, because clearly I'm older, and we would have met each other earlier in our lives. And because I'll say this everywhere, that this is the best partnership I've ever been in, and
Ditto.
we're almost 90% think the same, but the 10% of the foil part of it really works out well. And so life is so different since we partnered for me. So I guess I wish I would have met Rachel Rennebeck earlier in the business life cycle.
So let's hang here for a hot minute,
Mhm.
because
Okay.
you guys have come on this show as a partnership.
Mhm.
Let's talk about partnership in small business.
Sure.
What do you think makes you guys such a successful
Mm.
pair in
Mhm.
business? I mean, you
I
talk about being like-minded, but what
Yeah.
that only goes so far in a day.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
I really wish I knew that, because it was from the beginning. Like, people look at us and go, "You're either brother and sister, or you're married for the last 30 years," and neither are true. And so I don't know what it is, but it works so well. And I think, there's all the things of trust, and our families now are very close, which is like, we didn't even know each other, 8 years ago. So I don't know what it is, but I think it's the like-mindedness, but just enough of a foil character, and the trust that someone's going to pick up for the other one. I guess every partnership has to have that. And how do you know you have that going into it? I'm a very skeptical person. So, I'll go into it with skepticism, and let a little bit more lying out every little bit. And I don't know, it didn't take that long to do that, and to be open in this relationship, this business relationship. For some reason, I don't know, I just completely let
And
my
that's the
guard down.
personal part. And I agree, that's the personal part. And we always, when people locally ask us our story, I often end up saying, I left the small marketing PR firm where I met John, and my family said, "Okay, now do this on your own. You don't need," because I had a couple of women who were like, "Hey, we want to start this like woman, PR marketing like group." And I was like, "Oh my God, women, we want acceptance." And I was like, "Wow, they think I'm good." And my father, my husband, my best friend, they were like, "Really? I mean, you just left one place. Why do you have to jump into another? I thought this was for you to kind of figure it out." And so I did. And then I found myself sending him notes like, "What do you think about this? What should I do if I get this client?" Because by then we were friends, and we were helping each other. And after 6, 8, 10 months of that, we were doing it all the time. And so the relatability made sense. And after a year, it was like, if I'm retaining 3 clients, and you're retaining 3, 4 clients, imagine what we would do together. So that's our personal story. But I think the formula to give advice is, again, the willingness to accept someone else's opinion, because we all say that we do, but do we? So we are very similar, as he said, but there are sometimes, first of all, we're male and female. That's different. We're equipped differently. Again, I can say that I can be a bitch because I'm a woman. He can't say that, right?
Yeah,
because
no.
it would be an ugly
Not
day.
a good idea for that day.
Yeah. So, it's the willingness to accept that these are my weaknesses, these are my flaws. This person, we balance. And so if we can accept that, and once you do, the next level is the risk. So we've come there, but are we willing that this could fail? And if it does, what do we do? So I think it's the willingness to accept what could happen, and the trust.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing you guys
Plus I cook,
communicate
and he
really
eats over. What's that?
because you what?
I cook. We work out of my house. And so, when it's dinner time and I just pause to go get dinner started, because who knows what kid has what going on. Sometimes John stays.
Sometimes I lurk because I smell the homemade meatballs and red sauce. So I lurk.
That's
there's
what makes
that.
it last so long. Got it.
And I'm actually a pretty good cook. I just,
He's a very good cook. Yeah.
but in the meantime, it's always better when somebody else
Yeah.
makes it.
Of
Yeah.
course.
And now we want to be successful enough that we can hire someone because
Right.
it's not in our realm.
Right.
So someone cooks for us.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm also hearing that communication flows
yeah.
really well for you guys.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you can work out, like, when you disagree about something, it sounds like it can naturally work out because you communicate so well.
You know, I will say this. In the beginning, I remember being like, we never disagreed. Like there was like not an argument, I feel like, right? It was like that you can remember, right? There was just, oh, okay, we're good. We're good. Oh, great relationship.
Is that what you want me to
In
say?
the last, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just
year,
kidding. I'm just kidding.
when you feel the growth spurts of the small business, you feel it, in my opinion, you feel it first. You know something's happening and something's coming. You don't know what it is, but you know something's changing. And that adds a layer of uncertainty. And so every time I feel, when you're uncomfortable, you don't know how to react. And so my female traits are to be like, God, I don't know what to do, where John is very much more chill and very like, we'll get through this. And in the last year and a half, we've had more arguments because we feel comfortable enough knowing that they will result fine, because that's healthy. So there's not this fear. Like we've seen partnerships dissolve, unfortunately, people who we've modeled ourselves after. And it's this crazy 7-year mark, which we've sort of made an internal joke about. But we also look at it and say, I see why that happened. And I have the utmost confidence that it's not going to happen to us, because there's a mutual respect, there's a communication piece, there's a willingness to accept, there's a understanding that we could fail, but somehow we'll figure it out.
Yeah. I think, I've had experience before I lost my nice job, they did all these personality things, and every office had the little personality things up on everybody's name tag, so you knew what kind of office and meeting you were heading into, what that person's needs were. And I think
really wish everybody in the world would do that. Then I would know what I'm walking into.
I'm telling you, isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how right they are. And so for us, like I don't know all of that stuff, but I would be a fan of it. But the fact of the matter is knowing sort of where, I think inherently we both have that skill of knowing how to, again, gauge the room, gauge the person you're talking to and say, well, what are they all about? And so I think that's contributed to, do we have to stop here and take a break? Do we have to stop here and go for a walk around town?
Yeah.
Or do we just go get some coffee somewhere and figure this out? Or do we call a client and completely disregard what we're fighting about right now and come back to that later?
But it's like a marriage, because it's knowing that it's going to be okay at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you don't know how, literally it happened yesterday where we were walking to kind of get strategy for our day. And I said, I can't, you're killing me, but he knows that doesn't mean it's the end. Like, he's just like, okay, now she's going to walk 2 more. She's going to complain 1 more, and then we're good. It's going to work out somehow because that trust is there.
Awesome. Okay. So, which is a great segue into what's on the horizon for you guys. What's coming up that you're excited about?
From a company standpoint, or just in general, like
whatever you want to talk about.
Well, the fact that we're not even here and these are AIs of us right now, I find that very exciting. And the fact that you're completely fooled.
Silly woman.
I think it's just, the marketing side is exciting, and that's what I've done all my life. But I just love the fact that, at our ages, me being older, we still continue.
I make him say that. Did you notice?
We still continue to re-engineer ourselves. And I don't mean that like now I want to be a chef. I just mean more of like, we continue to understand the tools as they're coming at us and it's so rapidly. And continue to try to find people who know those, reach out for expertise and teach us a little bit. We don't want to know everything about how it all works, but we need to know enough so we can engage the right people to do those things. So the exciting thing is just how fast it's all changing. And, I'm hoping that it keeps me a little bit younger in the fact that we're involved in some of these things, that maybe someone my age is not. And so I think it's just exciting to see what's coming down the pike and how we could get on the top of that wave and ride it a little bit further.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, sure, because there's so much uncertainty and so much, who knew COVID was coming. I know I referenced that a bunch, but I think, there's some resiliency in people who have stuck through it and continued to figure out what they were. And I think we are examples, we're very humbled by people, like even using the word expertise. I don't know that we have that. We have experience, right? But I think that we appreciate that we are older and we adapted to what is new. And that's an uncertainty and a fear, and we've done it. So, what can't you handle? Not in a pompous way, but it may take longer, but you figure out how that next thing, because we're a media company now, and we started as a podcast and then a marketing company and then a merged thing. And now we're this media company where people are like, hey, unfortunately, this media company isn't making it. Would you guys want to buy it? And I thought, I never thought that would be, we're not in the market to do so, but the fact that that's the perception that we're that successful to do that means that we've come a long way. So when we used to just offer writing skills and maybe copy editing skills and marketing opportunities, now we're adding other things. And the fact that we're 47 and older, who knew
71.
Who knew that social media would be in that realm? Because again,
you are not 71.
No, I'm kidding.
I wish I would have gotten that for 47, but yeah, so I think it's just adapting and looking forward to what that is. And, I love seeing our team grow and seeing what they teach us also, because what's really cool is we have 11 people who work with us, and we never say for us, they work with us because they helped grow what we are and how we've evolved, because now we have somebody who strictly is siloed to doing e-blasts and newsletters, and who would have thought that? Because we have the need for it. We have 11 clients who are doing this regularly, and we have somebody else who's strictly doing IT and figuring out social media algorithms and reporting them back to us, so we're now able to get into that kind of growth. And I love seeing who's next to work with us and be a creative mind.
And on the podcast side, the Jagoff podcast side, it's like we actually contemplated giving up the podcast because we just thought the market's so full right now. What can we do differently? And small plug here, but we ended up getting 3 golden quills, and we we're not giving up the podcast. But as we related earlier in this episode here, is that we have found networking to be good because we get some clients to work with other clients. So the podcast is really the cornerstone of it all, and that's how we got here. So we're not going to give it up.
And by the way, Rachel,
yeah,
you and I are very similar in that you still look like you're like 34. So
good answer. Thank you.
You're supposed to say, and so do you.
Same.
Because I turned 49 next month. So
see,
yeah.
I would not have got that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. You go into the whole 40 thing and it was, I was kicking and screaming, and
now you're here. We're like, what
are you going to do? Yeah, it doesn't change. Yeah, it doesn't change though.
No,
I don't color my hair though. Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. I do every 4 weeks. Absolutely.
Do you think it's natural? I love when people go, I love your hair color. Oh, wonder, I don't know, what color is it?
Well, I have blue in mine. So
yes,
I see it.
Yeah. Because I want to look like Wonder Woman. So as close as I'm
understood. I see that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, Rachel, John, thank you so much for joining me today as part of this episode for my summer of strategy with this show. I have appreciated this conversation a lot, and I want to keep up with you guys. and I'm going to go listen to more episodes of you Jagoff. So I can't wait. I cannot wait. And plus, I just talked with a friend of mine. I'm like, I need to go to like Philadelphia. She's like, you need to go to Pittsburgh. I'm like, oh, okay. Then it's on my list.
Hit us up.
Hit us
Yeah.
up.
I will totally reach out whenever I head that direction. So
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, no
Awesome.
Philly, come here. It's where it's at.
Yeah.
well, thank you so much, you two, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We really
Appreciate it.
appreciate
Thanks for joining us for the Summer of Strategy series on Small Business Success Talk. Remember to share us with your network, leave us a great review, and subscribe for the latest episodes.